And that's the other thing, is that the book is just not good. What is up, BookTube? It is Monty, and today I am back once again with another video. Today it is New Year's Eve. It is currently 7:45 in the morning, and I need to charge, well, now it's 7:46. I definitely need to charge my phone. Ignore the fact that it's red. But I just woke up 20 minutes ago or so, and I'm going to be reading Rebel's Creed by Daniel Green today. This is the book that I'm going to end the year with. This is going to be book number 102. So I'll see you guys once I've actually read. The book it's longer than the novella, clearly, because this is a full-length novel, but it is only 362 pages according to this. So it's not horrible. I'll let you guys know once I've read some stuff. I have read like 215 pages of Rebel's Creed by R. Danny Boy. I don't want to talk about this. So I read Breach of Peace earlier this year. I said, let me grab the little Kindle version. Let me read it. Let me tell y'all what it's about. I'll leave a link to that reading vlog up above in the cards. In that book, I talked a lot about his world building, because this is what I was told this little novella trilogy was supposed to be about. That I think this is called like the Lawful Time series. There was going to be 3 novellas that were supposed to do all of the groundwork for the world building, and then there were going to be full-length novels after. Obviously, things changed. There was a little bit of a kerfuffle, if you will, around the depiction of the police force that is the world building of the Lawful Times, because the police, Breach of Peace is just a lot of police aggression, police brutality for 100 pages. There's sort of a murder mystery that's supposed to be there. There's a little bit of a rebellion arc that's there, but the godlike police force is the world building of it. Now, I talked a lot in that review about how this police force doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It doesn't make sense in the larger context of the world, where citizen policery, the precincts and all of that are very new. None of that really made sense for how the citizenry looked at the police and their relationship with the police, and how all of the police were, again, very violent towards the citizens, all the time. That there were supposed to be these laws and restrictions in place that were literally never followed by anybody at all, right? That was Breach of Peace. Here, I think that you can definitely see Daniel Green taking some of that criticism I don't want to say into action, because I don't think he has improved anything. I think that we are definitely following, in the latter half of the book, I think her name was Recce Tamlin and Holden. Her whole name is Recce Tamlin. Something like that. They are, Holden, I don't know what he's got going on. He has some weird issues. But they're definitely better police people, right? They aren't as nonsensical as what we were following in Breach of Peace. But at the same time, the book itself doesn't make sense. And I started off this whole novella trilogy because it definitely feels like 2 books that have been smashed together into one. Because the first half, not really. It's maybe a third. The first third of the book is mostly from Chapman's point of view, who is some kind of person of color in this world. In the first book, he was portrayed as being the worst of the worst, the most brutal of the brutal police people, and then plot twist, spoiler alert, he was actually working with the rebellion. So the first third of the book is an exploration of that period of time. So the entirety of the first book, that timeline, seeing what he was up to, how those events unraveled, how he got to where he was. But I said this in a Goodreads update, the Chapman that is given to us during this section of the book does not feel cohesive with the Chapman that we were presented with in Breach of Peace. That Chapman was presented to the reader by multiple characters, both Sam and Clyd, as being the most brutal police officer in the force, this, that, the third. Now, mind you, these are police officers who are judge, jury, and executioner who feel no sort of, like, wrongdoing about going outside the bounds of what they are prescribed, what they are allowed to do, because they routinely go outside of the law there. In that first book, the first book, I got so tired of reading, oh, it would be illegal, but we did it anyway. If they found out, we would be in trouble, but we're gonna do it anyway. Like, the book opens up with these people breaking the rules, right? That's the system within the police operate. And the Chapman that we are given here is like this whole innocent soul who doesn't want to murder this man who was like crying because he's murdering somebody 30 days, 60 days, 90 days before he is going to set a spark to this rebellion. And I said, make it make sense. Because this does not make the kind of sense that does. I do think that Daniel Green took some of the criticism to heart, and I also think that I don't watch the man's channel, so maybe he's talked through his thought process here, but I really feel like he saw people starting to give negative reviews and was quick to put out a video saying, I'm not pro, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not this, I'm not that. I think he saw that people were not fucking with his writing, and he said, there's no way I'm going to be able to spin this into something if I put out 3 novellas. And that's why Rebels Creed is smashed together. Because after we get through the period of the time that Breach of Peace occurred, the perspective change is hard. It is a hard switch into Reki and Holden. Mostly Holden, but Reki is like his partner. They have like a weird sex scene that I think did not, well, one, if you wanted to include it, the first part was fine. It's when he picked back up that it was weird. I also didn't really feel like I think he wanted his characters to be some kind of, bisexual, pansexual, and I don't think that the integration with her was, like, they were literally in the middle of fucking, and then she was like, yeah, like, this is fun and all, but I'm gonna be with a woman. And I'm like, that's fine. I love that we have, bisexual, pansexual characters in the narrative. I know that Daniel Green this year came out as, bisexual. I love that for him. But I was like, we could have integrated that line a little bit better. Maybe in a different spot, something that would have felt, I don't know if organic is the word I want to use, something that wouldn't have felt as awkward as it wound up feeling. Again, that's a personal thing. I can't speak for anybody else. Let me continue wrapping this up so I can go get my groceries. So it's a hard switch into Holden and Reki's perspective, something that I didn't think was very neatly realized. It bothered me, I don't want to say tremendously, but I was indeed bothered by this perspective change. And now that we are with Holden, which is where I'm at in the book on page 216, he is trying to uncover what happened in the first novella in Breach of Peace, because Clyd and Sam were his little mentor figures in the police academy, but now, the Ministry of Truth and the Ministry of Defense, or whatever the fuck, the Ministry of Science, they're all kind of like covering up what happened, because clearly the Almighty doesn't want rebellion to actually spark, to actually go anywhere, to actually do anything, which makes sense. Like, the cover-up aspect of the story makes sense. But I don't think that these two stories together make sense. I don't think they do. I think that if you were going to combine novellas, it would have made sense to combine Breach of Peace and what Chapman is up to, or to fully flesh out this Holden perspective. But having Holden and Chapman's stories in the same book feels disjointed. It does not feel like this was the clear vision. It does not feel like this is what Daniel Green wanted to execute when he sat down to do it. And that's the other thing, is that the book is just not good. Like, the actual prose of the book leaves a lot to be desired. I said in my review of Breach of Peace, in my discussion in that vlog, that his writing was just okay. It gives a, like, it's hard for me to really understand what is supposed to be happening in this world, what this world is supposed to look like, where we are supposed to be in relation to things, because every scene feels detached. Even when there are moments where we are going from Becky Tamlin's apartment to a pub to the police station, from the police station to fucking Holden's apartment, none of that feels lived in. There's no sense of the city around them ever. We are literally just in white rooms constantly. Nothing in this book is described for a reader to visualize anything. And again, in Breach of Peace, that was okay. But here in Rebels Creed, it does not feel okay. I understand that the name of the game in self-publishing is a little bit different than how it is in traditional publishing. But at the same time, I wish that instead of like just smashing these books together, that we had taken some more time. If these novellas were supposed to be the world building component of his larger, more expansive series, I call bullshit. Because the world itself, the continent that we're on, the history of these things don't make sense. We were kind of getting a little bit of that in the Chapman chapters at the beginning, but even that felt weird because Chapman is low-key a Pacific Islander character whose heritage and the history of the continent we were getting through him, or at least his people from the little island that he used to, like, his ancestors were from. And we kind of got some of that in like I said, later on in the chapter about a different group of people who used to live on the continent and their ancestors and these little children in their nursery rhyme. We were kind of getting that. We were almost there, but they were such brief periods of time, and it felt very weird to read about a Pacific Islander character whose heritage is being appropriated, written by a white man. I don't know Daniel Green like that. Maybe Mr. Green is the most white-passing Pacific Islander person since KJ Apa. Maybe that's what's happening. I don't know the man like that. I'm not all in his 23andMe, but it was a weird experience. And I know that the fantasy girlies, they don't give two fucks. I know. I say fantasy girlies, but it's really the fantasy dude bros. They don't give two fucks about two fucks, okay? I get that. But it was making me feel very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. And it's not even my hair, it's not even my culture. It's not my place to say that it was bad or poor or whatever it was. But the only glimpses of world building we were getting was from a character of color whose heritage had been erased and downtrodden upon by the empire that he had spent most of his adult life upholding by being a police officer doing the thing. It was very weird. It was very weird. But outside of that, and now that he is off the board and like dead or whatever, and we aren't getting back to Clid anytime soon, although there was some weird body horror stuff that this book opened up with that I was not comfortable with at all. Definitely could have used a little content warning for that because it was disgusting. But like, we are not getting any sense of world building. We're not getting any sense of themes, or like, the writing is just bad. It is so pedestrian. And I don't want to say that fanfic is often better, because I do think that fanfic, it has, you know, a whole world already established. So like, clearly you can go read a fanfic and find better world building because the world has already been built. But even I'm going to use Bobby Boy, because I know Bobby Boy and fucking Daniel Green are like best friends, because Daniel Green loves him some Wheel of Time. They do feel very similar. It does feel like that man was inspired by that man. And in my review of The Great Hunt, I said, you know, I don't even think that Robert Jordan is actually detailed, because he just gives you a bunch of details about shit that doesn't matter. And I also feel that his world felt very unlived in, very not tangible. And so that was just me. People have also argued that his world felt very Tolkien-esque. And so maybe if you're a real fantasy dude, bro, and you had read some fucking, you know, Lord of the Rings, that would work for you. But Daniel Green can't even do that, because his world, we know, definitely has electricity. It's definitely modern in some aspects. It's modern in some aspects, but even when we were in the wilderness, like there was a scene where Chapman got brought to the woods and there was like this little magical creature man.
that felt very out of place, because even though, yes, it's a fantasy, like, it just didn't work. And the wood, like, even the wilderness, it was just, the writing is bad. The writing is not good on a sort of base description level, on a level making the world feel real, characters feel real. None of that is working for me as a reader. And with just over 100 pages to go, I think I have like 150, 140 odd pages left, whatever the math is. I don't foresee myself picking up the next book, because for what? Like, at this point, I have read, allegedly, from my memory serving correctly, I have read the novellas that he wrote. I don't see a reason to continue on here. I don't have characters that I care about in a world that I find interesting. Because the world is so devoid of anything, I don't care about the rebellion. There could be potential, like, interesting political things that are happening because of what little we do know about how this world operates, but I don't trust Daniel Green to execute that well. I think that this was a fun project for him. I understand that people want to write books, and I think that clearly he has done that. But I also think that at some point you just have to understand that you're not good at it. I think that some people can definitely talk about fantasy. Clearly his channel is doing very successfully. So clearly he is good at talking about fantasy. Clearly he is able to articulate something in the stuff that he reads and watches and, consumes. But as for, processing the information into a world of his own, characters of his own, I think that he does not have that particular skill set at this time. I'll check in a little bit.
Okay, so I did it. I read all 362 pages of Rebels Creed. If there's some background noise, I have the water running because we have a freeze advisory going here. So that's how my 2021 is going out. But how do I describe this book? I kind of said a lot of it in the Target parking lot, where the book, and on my drive to Target. But the book definitely feels disjointed. It definitely feels like we had two distinct books that were pressed together in a way that I don't think made a lot of sense. I will say that I wound up enjoying the Holden half of the book. I say half, it was really like 2/3. That part of the book more than the initial chapters where we're getting Chapman's point of view. Not because it was, like better written or that the issues just like magically disappeared, but at least in that part of the book, stuff was happening that was new. And like, it was kind of actiony, kind of adventure-y. It still, like I said, was not executed well. The last part of the book that I had to read when I got back, we were following Holden as he tried to break Clyd out of her like prison cell. He was trying to find the rebel forces, get on their side, do the things, and the climax of the book is the rebels deciding to light the city on fire and like kill random civilians to kind of distract the police force and the anointed person that's on their tail, so they can dip out into the endless sea and go to the new world where all of this is so bad, where Chapman's like ancestor, like his people, like they had found like the new world, and they were all there, but they were primitive and they didn't have everything that they had on the continent that I don't think has a name or anything. Like he said, the world building not so great, but wherever the anointed ones are, their continent is advanced. And where, Chapman's people have decided to settle down after fleeing genocide, they're primitive. And so the rebel forces are going to go help the primitive people and hope that the primitive people are going to band with them to fight back the evil empire. And I said, this is foolishness. If it wasn't bad enough that we had the weird God cops and Breach of Peace, now we have this weird storyline where the evil white empire and his like chosen anointed gods are going to go on a holy war against these random people of color. Y'all, please don't read this. Just please don't. Like, if the book was well written, you know, if it had like lush descriptions and like really elegant prose, or like literally anything, I could say, you know, maybe it's interesting. If it explored any of those themes of colonialization or colonization or literally anything, I could say maybe go read it. I don't know if I would want those, you know, things expanded upon here, but it definitely doesn't want it. It's definitely not for me. The book also, I felt, did this thing where Daniel didn't quite know how to give the reader certain parts of the story, and so we would just randomly follow different characters' perspectives. Like, he didn't know how to like weave the story together in a way that it was like logical, that so we could follow set characters. It was just kind of like, oh, I have this like really cool idea for a scene, and so for a scene we had to read for I wouldn't say like their actual perspective chapters, but we would be in Avi, which is one of the anointed demigods. Like, we would be with her, or we would be with like Flip. I think that was his name. And so it was like, okay, we have like these extended scenes, but we don't actually know these people all that well. Like, it's just, you want to give us this information, so this is why we're here. But it didn't feel like it was a well thought out beyond that. It was just kind of like, I need to do this, so here we are. And I didn't like that. I felt that that was kind of lazy, and I felt that it was certainly unimaginative, right? Like, if you're gonna do this, just do this, especially in something that is short. Because again, it is my understanding this is supposed to be a trilogy of novellas, and so that part of the book would have been like 112. Like, where is it? It's kind of like here, like. This is kind of the part of the book where we are mainly following Chapman, and then this part of the book feels like it was a different novella, and very little was done between the two to bridge it. We just get like part 2 wounds, so it's kind of it doesn't feel cohesive in a narrative way. So that was weird. I think if you hadn't known that that's what this is supposed to be, and you were just reading the novel, it would be weird. It would just feel very odd, very strange. I will say that whatever they were doing with the drip still doesn't make any sense. I don't understand what like entirely what's going on there. It was kind of giving me there is a alien symbiote situation that happens in To Sleep in a Sea of Stars, and it was kind of giving that vibe, but that's literally just because I had read that book, and so I was kind of like, okay, so you're just doing what Christopher Paolini did. Again, he wrote this book however many, years ago. I'm not saying that he actually stole from Christopher Paolini. I'm just saying that it was very reminiscent, and it was kind of the lesser version. Again, I don't like when things are moving inside of like human bodies. Like, that's just not something I particularly like to read about. I don't think it's actually like a huge part of having to read from like Clid, but the book definitely opens with that, and it was disgusting, and there were some other mentions of it later on in the third act, and I don't vibe with it. So that was his unique interpretation of whatever is going on with this fantasy thing that they had going on. There was a few more elements of sort of like magic, a few attempts made at like explaining stuff, usually in relation to the grips. The grips had most of the fantasy and like aspects of the book, along with the anointed, I guess, technically, because they have some kind of superhuman abilities going on over there. But ultimately, like, just don't read this. I don't think it offers a whole lot to the fantasy genre as a whole. I don't think that as a piece of fiction, it's all that entertaining. And I think that there's definitely things that you could do that are better written than this, better executed than this. I wish him luck in his future endeavors. I don't think that I'll be taking the time to read from him again. This is why I wanted to get this out today, the last day of 2021. I started my year with him, kind of, sort of. I think I read that book in like March or so. I'm ending my year with him. And I think I'm okay with closing this chapter of my life. So if you've enjoyed the video, make sure you let me know down below. If you have nothing to say, you can always drop this emoji down there. I'll see you guys again tomorrow with my first read of 2022. But until then, and until next time, bye.